For the past few decades, manufacturing and exports have been the main pillars of China's booming economy. But according to a new report by KPMG, China is losing its edge as the world's cheapest place to manufacture goods. The UK is a main beneficiary from the rising cost of wages and a shortage of labor. In order to capture the full image of the scenes, we traveled to Margate and visited the iconic British toy brand Hornby. Nearly 80 years, Hornby has been a household name in Britain. Like many other companies, Hornby has outsourced their production to low-cost countries like China. However, recently, Hornby has started bringing manufacturing back to the UK. This phenomena is known as reshoring. Britain is a country where the Industrial Revolution happened. That transformation helped to make the world in which we live today, and once put Britain at the top of the world's manufacturing list. However, yesterday's story almost faded out from the global market. In 1990s, there was a general exodus to Asia in search of lower costs. Hornby was no exception, whose manufacturing was back and forth between Britain and China.
We moved out towards the end of the 1990s. Up until that point in time, the products were manufactured actually here in Margate. This site is 60 years old next year, and we used to do all of our model rail manufacturing here. We moved it out in the late 1990s. It was labour continuing to be difficult in the UK, but ultimately the cost associated with the labour element, if nothing else, meant that it wasn't practical to make them in the UK anymore, and therefore in the 90s we moved that production out to China, and that gave us the capacity to meet the demands of our enthusiasts, put more detail into the products, and therefore to meet what they want.
Hornby has created a miniature world with incredibly detailed products, ranging from its most iconic collection of model train to the latest air-fixed quick builds. So, what are Hornby's manufacturing requirements? And what reasons have driven Hornby to manufacture abroad?
I guess one of the first areas that we look at when considering where to manufacture now is how big the labour content is, and then that cost, how does that relate to the overall cost of the product? And then other features then become more important to determine where actually you manufacture that product.
Someone used to argue that companies unwilling to send their manufacturing to lower-cost countries like China were putting their very future in jeopardy. However, China is no longer a low-cost country. The growing labor wages has increased the pressures on the central brand of Hornby.
We've had a difficult 2 or 3 years. Some of that driven by the difficulties of manufacturing in China with wage inflation, with the whole success, I guess, of that manufacturing zone in China, Shenzhen, Duangguan, has certainly created some pressures for us in terms of availability of labour and product, and that flow of product has been difficult, particularly in the last year. It causes a lot of frustration, and therefore that's something we're working very hard on now.
The rise of labor wages is not the only reason that able to push Hornby away from China. Last year, they have brought air-fixed manufacturing back to the UK. Is there any other reasons? And what did they learn from this?
If you just think about the manufacturing process, when you look at model rail, there are hundreds of pieces in terms of assembling that, so it's a very manual assembly process. So probably 50% of the cost of that product is in the labour. When you take something like an injection moulded aircraft, there's virtually no labour at all. It's pretty much all raw material, and then obviously there's some transportation of those parts around the factory and packing, but it's a very small part of the product, and therefore that's why the labour cost becomes a much smaller part of the total cost equation. The principal reasons for bringing some of the manufacturing back, particularly with a new product launch, very simply, you're in the same time zone when you're communicating, and for a new product launch that's really important because inevitably there are engineering challenges as you commence production, some debugging, and so if you're in the same time zone, that makes that process much easier. Certainly that responsiveness to the market, if demand picks up, as it has, right now this week we're going back to our manufacturer in the UK for FX Quick Build and saying, look, we need you to put some extra shifts on, we need you to produce extra product, and we can't wait 4 weeks for it to be shipped to the UK. We need to have it next week because that's what our retailers want. And then simply the whole engineering, product development process where there's a backwards and forwards to the new manufacturers to get them to understand the product that we want and to make sure that it's right first time. That's very important.
China's manufacturing engine looks like it could be slowing down. The customers in global market, whatever they buy now, are not just made in China. It could well now be made in India, Turkey, and Mexico. Now, as Britain is rebounding, made in the UK has started to gain traction. So, what certain values does made in Britain still stand for? And will China lose its competitiveness gradually?
I think to some extent, whereas historically we would say manufacturing will always be in Asia, that's our default position. Certainly made in China is something that does appear in our boxes. I think in this day and age, people understand that China is a modernising economy. It's perhaps not seen in the same way that it might have done a number of years ago, and it's seen as a modern industrial country, and therefore it's not something that should be hidden away in the box necessarily. People certainly hark back to our manufacturing heritage as a country, quality, leaders in the field, technical innovation, all those sorts of things are synonymous, I think, with made in Britain. For British brands, made in Britain is a great thing to be able to say. Certainly we're very proud if we can put on the box made in Britain. And so if we have the opportunity to shout about that and it endorses the brand, then it's something we're going to do.
After visiting Hornby, we had a chance to attend two of Britain's leading events in the technology and fashion industry, the Gadget Show and the British Textile Forum. We want to discover a clear answer of the values behind the two labels of Made in Britain and Made in China.
Well, before recent years, there was a tendency to forget we actually had a textile industry and a clothing manufacturing industry. Everybody thought that we'd moved everything to China, but of course we have about 100,000 people still working in the textile industry in the UK. Increasingly, the luxury market is booming. Many of the luxury labels buy a lot of stuff from the UK. So there's a great value put on British labels. People think everything in Britain is expensive when it's not. People think everything from China is cheap when it's not. You're doing some very expensive and high quality fabrics, and the world is a free place, and free competition is really good.
英国制造，我想它是代表一种品质，非常的精美。另外，它有它固有的传统的东西在里头。我们中国制造像 Made in China， 就是在世界各地我们都可以看到。但是呢，它是代表一种比较低端的这种形象。那么现在呢，至少在北京市的这个时尚，这个政府对时尚的这块要求呢，我们是要求是要这个做这个创意的。那么是它有它自己的一般这个来样加工的这种工厂呢，基本上是慢慢的萎缩。那么它是弘扬一种现在宣传和扶持一种就是自主产业，就是我们要做自己的品牌。那么慢慢的也向这种精细化的国际化的这个方面转型。那么我想就是将来的这个距离啊越来越会接近。就是马上这 Made in China 也会是一种品牌。
My name's Guy. I own a company called Aircraft Vacuums. We designed them with an amazing company out in China. So we went through the design process with them. They're such good partners to work with. We go out to China every couple of months and see them and see, because the product is always being developed. So we kind of work together on how we can improve the product all the time. We take feedback from customers. I know that China and the UK hasn't got the best reputation, but we've looked everywhere and we found that China make really good quality products. And really, if you're going to be a new company in a marketplace like the UK where there's a lot of competition, you need to have an amazing price point.
Will the UK manufacturing come full circle and return to the golden years of the 20th century? And will the world manufacturing center, China, has a significant transition? It's a question that will be tested by the real market. This is Chen and Dream Keep Man reporting from London.